Let's open our eyes to the world that's around us. Science has the answers to the questions that have found us.
Malia Science.
Hey, Dad, you gotta do these dishes, but the water ain't working.
No water. Well. I guess we better go check the well.
Yep.
Let's go. There we go. Just a stuck foot valve. That was the only problem. Yeah. Down in that hole is where we get all the water from our house. That's our well. Thanks to the Chinese, we can get water right to our house.
Thanks to the Chinese?
Oh, yeah. The Chinese actually invented the idea, or came up with the idea, of digging deep down into the ground until you hit the groundwater, and then using that water as drinking water. So basically, about 1,000 years BC, which is over 3,000 years ago, they came up with this idea for a well. They came up with a lot of great ideas, actually. Let's go inside and take a look at some other inventions that the Chinese gave us.
Alright, yeah. Hey, Dad, thought you said you were gonna show me some of those inventions that came from China.
Oh, yeah.
Huh?
I am. I got a whole wheelbarrow full. This is just a small portion of the things that came from China. Yeah, let's look at them, all right? Let's start out with what's known as the Big Four, all right? The Big Four inventions that totally changed the world. I mean, they're all pretty important, but these ones totally changed the world. First of all, paper. Yeah, the Chinese, around 100 AD, were the first people to come up with a way to make paper out of pulp, which is just grind up parts of plants. They come back together, and from that, you know, they use paper for wrapping things and toilet paper, paper cups, all sorts of different things. But the second of the Big Four is printing. They also invented ways to print. Oh yeah, that's right. They also came up with the first paper money. They developed a way to print onto the paper that they made. Now, we use big printing machines now to make prints. Oh, Mr. Popper's Penguin, good book, huh? But back then, they used something a little bit more like these stamps here. Come on in, camera girl of science. Like these stamps. They would carve the image of the Chinese symbol that they wanted onto the stamp. Now, this is a horse, but theirs would be a Chinese symbol. And then they would press it onto the paper. I'm sure you've seen maybe your teacher use these stamps in school, but this is how they did their first printing. So that's the first two of the Big Four. They came up with a way to make paper, and then they came up with a way to print on paper, to make scrolls and things like that. They didn't quite make books yet. The second of the Big Four, or the third of the Big Four, I'm sorry, was gunpowder. Gunpowder bombs. This they made, you know, usually they came up with they made fireworks and things out of it, but they also used it in their warfare. They were the first people to come up with bombs and even handguns. They came up with, they called them hand cannons. They were the first civilization to come up with these. They made something called stink bombs. A stink bomb was a bomb they threw at the enemy, but they added sulfur into it. So that even if they didn't hit the enemy's buildings or things, it would really stink up the area and make them sick. So they came up with bombs about 1000 BC, was the first recipe for gunpowder that we found in a military handbook. All right, the last of the Big Four is right here in my pocket. The compass. All right, the compass. Do you know what a compass does?
It points to the north.
Right. Since the Earth is magnetized, there's a magnetic North Pole that the compass will always point to. And they didn't really use it as a navigational tool so much. They just found, hey, look, this piece of lodestone or that's a natural rock that is actually magnetic. You know, it always points in the same direction. So they thought that it was magic. Because anything that moves by itself, you might think is magic. If we didn't know about science, we'd say, oh man, that's just magic. So they would see things kind of moving by themselves and they'd think, well, this must be magic. I can tell the future. So they used it for something called geomancy, which is telling the future by using magnets or carvings in the earth or different things like that. Sometimes they use dice. But, we believe that they came up with the very first compasses. And they were the ones who made iron into a compass. They would magnetize a piece of iron in the shape of a fish and put it into water, and it would point in the same direction because it was magnetized. So those are the big four: paper, printing, and gunpowder, and compasses. And we use those today for so many different things. But there's tons of other cool inventions from China. Yes, let's get rid of that. All right. Tea, we know, came from China. They were some of the first people to come up with tea. And if you like a good drink of tea, you can thank the early Chinese people who decided I could put these leaves in water and it makes it taste good. They also came up with soybeans too. They were the first people to actually grow soybeans. And if you look at the ingredients in just about everything, you'll find soybeans. How about playing cards? Yep, they came up with a lot of cool games, mahjong, and they came up with the first decks of playing cards a long time ago. They came up, hey, you know what? I'm sick of this boat just sitting there. Oh yeah, got some soybeans coming in. Soybeans! Woo! Thanks, China, for the soybeans.
Yum.
Find something. These are everything. And we grow a lot around here, but they first came to China. There you go. I'm sick of my boat sitting here. I need a way to move it, and there's no wind. The Chinese people came up with the very first evidence of an oar. Land ho! How about
when there is wind?
when there is wind? Yes. The very first kites are from China. Very good. They called them wooden birds in the very first thing. Wooden birds that they made. And obviously they come in, this is an octopus, not a bird. But I can see why they kind of call them wooden birds. And we know a very famous inventor from Pennsylvania, Ben Franklin, used a kite when he was discovering electricity, or at least discovering that lightning can be harnessed as electricity.
What's next?
Well, like to keep your pants up, don't you? The Chinese came up with the very first belt buckle. That's a cool thing. Good thing. We don't want our pants falling down. How about another thing they used? Ooh, an axe spike. They were really good at working with iron. And they could make a lot of different things out of iron. They made a lot of their weapons out of iron. They're one of the first civilizations to do that, which was better than the bronze. It's not really sharp. But this was called an axe spike that they used. Their guards used it to guard the emperor. Very important, to guard the emperor. All right, how about Cujo? Cujo was a game that was found in that same book that they found the recipe for gunpowder in. And Cujo was thought to be the very first reference to football. It was probably more like European football, more like soccer that we called it, but it was used. They really enjoyed playing it, especially with other cities and things like that. They'd have competitions. They took it very seriously. And they used it to train their soldiers to work together. Kind of like in sports, you got to work together. So they used it to train their soldiers. Cujo, or football. Here you go, cast iron. Bet you have one of these around the house, or you take it camping sometimes. Cast iron is it was first found in China.
Yeah.
Made by the Chinese.
A lot of things.
Yep, and they love to cook fish. But getting those fish out of that water without nets is pretty tough. So, guess what they invented? They don't have nets with them.
Rod.
They invented, the fishing rod and reel. Well, they had the rods, and we don't know who used the first rod, but they invented the reel. Put line on there that you didn't have to just back up. Can you imagine if there wasn't a reel to reel on your fish? You just have to keep backing up till it came out. Well, they said, hey, let's hook this to a wheel and crank it in. So they invented the first fishing reel. And
the only thing?
The abacus. The abacus, more paper money. Now, this is like the first calculator. And you can see that it has a bunch of different rows of beads. And each one of these rows represents a different place value. You know, we could say I got my ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s on this one, but all their abacuses, you know, they could have looked different. So if I wanted to use this, I could add it together. I could say I got 3 10s and 2 1s. Oh, look, you want to buy a fishing rod? Okay, that is a 10 and a 1. And then later I say, oh, look, now I got another 10 and another 1. Now I have 43, whatever their money was. It wasn't dollars, but we'll say $43. So you see how I added 11 to my 32. So there are some really cool inventions from China. Oh, one more. Forgot this. They also gave us the wheelbarrow. So thanks, China, for all these cool inventions.
Yeah, and thank you for showing me and teaching me a lot about this.
Hi, guys. We're going to finish up our video with a story called Let's Go to China. It's a story by Tommy Tongs, and it's a little tour of China. It's got some really cool pictures, so I'm going to move in closer so that you can see the book. You don't need to see me, just hear me. And everybody in the Malia gang that's watching this video, you'll get a copy of this book to take home, and you can follow along with us if you would like. China is on the other side of the world from the United States. It is part of what is called the Far East, because in the old days, it was thought to be the farthest land to the east of Europe, from the Americas. It is a little faster to go west, but you have to go really far over the Pacific Ocean, which is the biggest ocean in the world. It takes a full day to cross by air, but if you took a boat, it would take 10 days on a modern ship. There's China, and there's the United States. When it's daytime in the West, it's nighttime in China, because the sun can only see half of the world at one time. When the Earth spins halfway around, it's bedtime in the West, but the Chinese are just beginning their day. What happens when the world spins around all of the way? China is the 4th largest country in the world, but it has the most people. Russia is the largest, Canada is next, and the United States is 3rd, mostly because Alaska is so huge. But China has 3 times more people than all those other countries combined. Since China has so many people, parents were only allowed to have 1 child for many years. That means that the only one in every 7 people in China are kids. That makes for a lot of spoiled kids with both parents and all 4 grandparents to themselves. China has most of the biggest cities in the world too. They have almost 170 cities with more than 1 million people. There are only 30 cities that big in Europe, and 10 in the United States. Wow! People live much closer together in China and are around other people almost all of the time. In order to be polite and give people their privacy, the Chinese ignore each other and sometimes don't even know that other people are around them. In the West, this can seem rude, but the Chinese think it is most polite. Some trains can go 300 miles per hour and carry more than 3,000 people. That's like 10 big airplanes taking off all at once. These bullet trains use powerful magnets to actually float above the tracks. For shorter trips, it can often be faster to travel by train than by airplane. China has more trains and subways than any other country in the world. More than 100 million Chinese travel by train to go to work and visit other cities every day. During the holiday, there are so many people on trains in China. There are as many people on trains in China as there are living in all of North America. That's a lot of trains and a lot of people. Shanghai has more people than any other city in China and is one of the world's largest. Its seaport is certainly the biggest one on the planet, and its financial district, Podong, is filled with some of the coolest looking skyscrapers in the world. The streets are very crowded in China. There are buses and trucks and taxis and cars, bicycles, motorcycles, scooters, police, street sweepers, newspapers, stands, food carts, and people everywhere. With so many people, sometimes it is difficult to get where you want to go. If you run into someone, you say, "Bu hao yese," ise. That means "excuse me," and is written like that. Beijing is the capital of China, and many emperors built great palaces there. There also built very long, tall wall to protect the city and empire. It is called the Great Wall, and is more than 5,500 miles long. That's long enough to separate the United States from Canada. People used to say that the Great Wall could be seen from outer space, but once we got to outer space, we had to stop saying that. However, it is the longest and largest thing ever built by man, taking millions of people thousands of years to build. The first ruler of China was Emperor Qin. Just over 2,000 years ago, he stopped all the other kings from fighting and brought the people of the area together. For the first time, Qin is considered the father of China and was buried with an army of 10,000 clay soldiers to protect him in his afterlife. The name of the clay is terracotta. Each soldier is bigger than a grown man, and all of them are different since they were each made by hand. Emperor Qin's clay army and foot soldiers, chariots, horsemen, musicians, advisors, doctors, and acrobats. China has many famous teachers. One of the most famous was Confucius. He studied very hard so he could serve the emperor, but he could not pass the examinations. He decided to become a teacher and taught people to be obedient to their parents and elders, to take care of those younger than themselves, and to be kind and courteous to everyone. China had many other great thinkers who invented some of the important things a long time ago. Can you name some of them? Bells, we know they invented bells. Kites, umbrella, fireworks, crossbows, paper making, the abacus, we looked at some of these. Oh, there's the early compasses. And they made soybeans, we talked about a lot of these. Around 1,500 years ago, a man named Bodai traveled over the highest mountains in the world to bring Buddhism to China. During his journey, Bodai saw many interesting animals and studied how they moved. He created his own exercise from the animals' movements and called it the 18 Hands of Lohan. These exercises were the beginning of Kung Fu and are thought to be the very first martial arts in the world. After meeting the emperor, Bodai traveled to a little monastery in the middle of China named Shaolin. He taught the monks his exercises so they would be strong enough to sit still and think for many hours at a time. He also wanted them to be healthy and able to defend themselves when robbers came. The Chinese love to celebrate with festivals. Their biggest celebration is on the first full moon of the year, and it is called Spring Festival or Chinese New Year. The holiday lasts for 2 weeks while millions and millions of fireworks are set off all over the country. For Mid-Autumn Festival, they like to visit family and eat mooncakes. Long ago, a famous poet named Qiu Yan threw himself in the river when he became heartbroken
over his country's demise. People rushed to save him in their boats. They threw rice into the river to feed the fish so that they would not eat the beloved poet. Today, Chinese honor him with the Dragon Boat Festival. People leave work early to have boat races and toss rice into the river. The Chinese use one of the oldest ways to write in the world, and it is very hard to learn. Each word is called a character. Each character was like a little picture at first, but today they become much harder to guess by looking at them. Sun, these are pretty easy ones. Moon, I could guess that. But it looks like over time, like the goat, yeah, that looks like a goat. But that does not look like a goat. Kids must study very hard to learn 5,000 of these characters before they can go to college. You think you could draw any of them? In China, people eat with chopsticks instead of using a fork. Chopsticks are a pair of sticks the size of pencils that are squeezed together like tweezers to pick up food. They can seem very hard to use if you do not grow up with them. Even people who can use them, well, like to hold their bowls very close to their mouths so less food gets dropped on the table and floor. The Chinese love to eat rice, and most of them have it every day. But they also like to eat Western food like hamburgers, donuts, pizza, and ice cream. Yum. Many great people have visited China. Some came as teachers, some came as traders, some even came to conquer the land and build the biggest empires in the world. Do you know any of these people? Marco Polo. Marco Polo. Yeah, he came as a trader to find out about the spices and the silk that the Chinese people had. Budai Dami, he came as a teacher. Genghis Khan, ooh, he came to conquer. He was one of the Mongolians. They built the wall. Nixon, he came to talk about peace and work things out with China when we weren't getting along so well. And Jesuit priests. The Chinese are very curious. They love to talk to Westerners and ask all sorts of questions like, where do you live? What is your school like? And what do you do for fun? What would you ask them if you met someone from China? Well, a lot of the same questions. China is one of the oldest countries in the world and is protected from invaders by the Pacific Ocean in the east, rugged mountains in the west, and the Great Wall in the north. Today, China is once again a very powerful nation with a strong economy, modern military, and improving conditions. Some people think it will become the greatest country in the world someday. Well, there you go. Let's go to China.